So we've undone the clamps, spun the kiln around again, and now we're showing off the 3 holes that are in the front of your kiln. One's in the middle here, there, which is for your thermocouple, and we've got 2 on the side here, which is where your element's going to come in and out of the kiln. Now I will remember to pre-drill these holes through the calcil on all the kit ones that go out, so that you don't have to have a 25mm hole bit. But just in case you're making your own one, you'd want about a 25mm hole bit. And we just drill it in nice and gently. We're trying to go through the calcil, but not through the brick. And I'll give you a nice little plug of calcium silicate. And same again on this one. Through the calcil, but not through the brick. You'll definitely hear it change if you ever hit brick. And that gives us 2 entryways there. We also need a hole for the thermocouple. This one goes through the brick and the calcil. So now that those are done, we can start feeding the element. Okay, so our elements for these are 23 ohms of resistance, and they're 3.6 meters long in order to come around the kiln twice. 23 ohms of resistance gives us our 10 amps worth of element. Now with the element, we're going to start, funnily enough, with the pointy end. Either pointy end will work, and we just want to feed it down through this top element channel and have it come outside of the kiln. So we just feed it down the top element channel. It's going to come out one of those holes we just made, just like that. And now we want to just drag it back in a little bit so that the element is encased inside of the brick. That's going to be really hard to show, so let's demonstrate on one of these. So this is the brick that's just here, and all we're going to do is feed the element in through it, and you'll push it too far through, then just drag it back until it's inside the brick. So we do that again, pull it too far through, then drag it back in, and we just feed the element inside the element channel. It should be tight. The idea is that it's not going to come out again easily. And when it comes to a corner, we sort of push it in a bit and go, yeah, it's going to be about there. We give it a slight pull, and we give it a bend so that the element holds the bend relatively well. And then we push that deep into the corner. And when it's all worked properly, the element sits in there nicely inside the element channel and keeps itself in. Now we just double check that this is still encased in the brick, and it is. Now comes the only remaining annoying part of the kiln build. Because this element has to go around the kiln twice, and the astute amongst you will have noticed that that's impossible because they're 2 individual element channels and we only have the 1 element. What we need to do instead is take, in my case, just the blade out of the hacksaw, and we pick a spot somewhere near the middle, and I'll zoom in nice and tight on this so you can see. So we're going to pick a spot somewhere near the middle. I'm going to go for about here, and we're just going to pull the element out of the way, and I'm going to make a cut that runs from the bottom to the top element channels. It doesn't have to be particularly wide. For this one I'm going to use the gap in the brick because it's at a convenient spot. So what the element is going to do is come to there and then go down to the bottom row and back across. So to get that to happen, again, we do a little bit of guesstimation. We put the element in and we say, there it is there. We grab the element at that point. So we grab it at that point and then we grab it and half an inch or so away from there and we pull. And we're going to straighten that out. And we straighten it out as best we can. When the element hasn't been fired, it is surprisingly flexible and malleable. So you can get it into a relatively straight piece of wire again. They do start out their life as just a piece of wire on a very large coil. And then we get a company to make them into a custom coil for us of the dimensions we wanted, and the length we wanted, and the resistance we wanted. Which is quite handy. So you can never do this with a fired coil. If the element ever pops out of the housing a little bit and you want to get it back in, you just have to heat it up. So we want it to go a bit like that, and we want it to come down. We want it to get to there and we want it to go back in. And then we want it to turn again. So we make a little U shape. And we'll just work that a little bit so it's a bit nicer looking. So it's in a U shape, hopefully you can see it relatively well. And then we push that down nice and deep into the element, and that keeps it hidden. So now that we've gone to all of that trouble, we then run this back the other way, and again, same as before, we come to a corner, we stretch it a little bit, we kink it, we push it in, okay, so sometimes when you're pushing the element in, you'll find it's a little bit tough. I like to use a square, something along the lines of this, just to give it a helping hand to get nice and deep into that element channel. This is a bit of a pain at the moment, having a tight element, but later it's very handy because it's extremely unlikely to ever come out. And it won't be tight the whole way around. Just some bricks will be, if they were sitting differently as they were cut. Again, because we do them all by hand, there's always a tiny little bit of variation. Well, I say we do it by hand, we do it all by a machine, but it's all done by me, and I am prone to mistakes. So we keep pushing the element in on the way around. Every time we get to a corner, we give it a little stretch, we give it a little bend, and then we push that into the corner. As you can hear, that part there was a little bit tight, but it's in. At this stage I always just double check that we've got enough element, because we can do little adjustments. So we are running a little bit short. To do an adjustment, all we do is hold the element about 2 feet apart and just give it a light stretch, and do it again a little later on, and that's going to be absolutely fine. It's probably going to be fine before. I just gave it about another inch of length. So again, we come to here, we can see where it's ending, so we want to hold it there, pull out about 3.5 coils, start straightening them. So I like to try to get it straight in one angle first and then give it a turn and then strain it up on the other angle. I find that works the best. But it's never easy. Fortunately, it's something you only have to do once, and this element will last quite an amount of time. So, again, we're going to say it comes to there, it's going to come out, and then it's going to bend, and then it's going to bend, it's going to come to the top, it's going to bend back, and then it's going to go that way. Just like that. We'll push this in. Okay, and that one's in as well. So yes, it is a bit of a pain, but again, you only have to do it once. Now we're into the top, and obviously I was a little bit more generous with the sizing on the top element run. You can see we are going to be about 2 inches short, so again, just grab a nice long length, just give it a little pull, stick it back in, just run it around, and now it's perfect. So we're going to give this a bend there. This comes along to this part, and we've just got to take this end and get it to come out through that second hole. Like that. And we'll squeeze this element into place. And then that is not only your element run, that is also the body complete. Sorry, forgot one tiny little bit. That looks a little bit dangerous the way it is because there's metal touching metal and you're going to be occasionally touching this metal. But these are the little ceramic insulators which are included in the kit. The element slides down through those. They sit against the brick. The same one with the other one. They sit against the brick, pass through the insulation. And then we have our terminal block, which they go up the inside of. And we're just going to lightly secure this for now, just to keep the elements in the right position. And we secure it fully later. You also get some very handy bonus kiln pins. So if you ever have a brick go loose, you can use one of these, unwind it, you get 2 of them, cut them a little bit shorter, and you can drive this down through multiple bricks and it will help hold it in position. Okay, that's the body done. Okay, so I've had a shower, cleaned up a little bit, which is a very good sign for all of us that we're about to get to the cleaner part of the build, which is the lid. You'll have received one of these in your package. It's got a nice large hole in the middle of the 65mm thick calcium silicate boards, and on the other side there is a much smaller hole. This is a side that's going to be very shiny, just like the tops over there. You'll also have received a sheet of fiberboard, which is going to go just on the top. It's got a matching hole. All we do is we place our fiberboard just on top over the matching hole, and if it doesn't line up perfectly in one direction, spin it and it will line up much better. There's definitely going to be an angle where it all lines up because I'll have pre-done all the holes for you when you receive your kit. You also have a mushroom plug which simply goes in the hole. Okay, so that's a bit better of an angle. So again, we just place the fiberboard over the hole, take our mushroom plug, Drop it down the hole and just give it a little twist and it'll go in. You don't have to push too hard. And then we take our cup head machine screw, which was in the bag. Drop it down the hole, wiggle it for a minute, and it should. It definitely fits. There we go. It'll find its hole. So now, to actually get it to come through the body of the lid, we just pop it up on its edge. And I'm just going to take the screwdriver in behind, get it in the screw again, wiggle the screw a minute until it comes through. And then we take the bullet head nut, pop it on the thread, and just screw it down. You don't screw this down super tightly because it doesn't need to be, plus the more heat cycles it does, the tighter that will get. One last step is we take some of our leftover ceramic fibre blanket and we just wedge it into the mushroom plug, nice and tight, and that just helps protect the screw a little bit. And when it's done, we'll pull off the excess. And we are finished assembling the lid. Lid was much quicker than the body. Now we've got to put the two together. Okay, so we've got our body back up on the bench. The elements are coming out on this end over here. So this is your front, this is the back. All we need to do now is just to make cleanup a little bit easier. We peel off this little bit of protective film. And it comes off in sections. So we leave it on for as long as possible, just to help not scratch up the steel. You can polish it just with any metal polish if a shiny kiln is what you're after. Next up we take the kiln lid again, and you'll notice on one end it has 3 rivets at the top. That's the end we use for the back side. So there's a rivet, and a rivet. There's also 2 on the ends, and all they do is they're effectively, we needed the box to be openable so that we could fill it with insulation, and then we close the end. Because they're rivets, we might as well have it at the back. Now all we need to do is line it up properly. Okay, so that's much more of a bird's eye view, and you can see we've got a gap here, there's a gap at the back, there's a gap at this side as well. All we want to do is make them relatively even as possible. And we just try not to drag the lid on the bricks because it's got fibre on the bottom. The fibre is replaceable. It probably needs to be replaced every couple of years, so it's not a regular thing. You'll notice it needs to be replaced just when it starts to look a bit ratty. Okay, so we've moved you so the hinges are slightly more visible. These are the hinges that come in the kit. They're relatively straightforward hinges. We just pop them on, drag them back a little bit so that they sit nicely. And then we're going to take a measure, and we're going to make it about 175 from one end and about 175 from the other end. Does not have to be exact, and you can make it 150, you can make it 160, you can make it literally any number that suits you. Now we're just going to line it up perfectly and take a punch. Now you don't need to use a punch, but it just makes the drilling easier. Pop the punch in the middle, make a mark, make a mark, make a mark, come over to this one, line the hinge up the same as we lined up the other one, make a mark, make a mark, and make a mark. Now again, if you don't have a riveter, you can use self-tapping screws for these ones. Because you're going into stainless steel, you do want to drill a small pilot hole, smaller than the threads of the thread widths of the screw, but just enough to help it get started, because stainless steel will work harden. So if you sit there spinning the drill on it and the screw is spinning and getting hotter and hotter and hotter, the steel is getting harder and harder and harder. So you do always want to just make a little pilot for it to make it easier. I'm just going to double punch all of these to make a nice deep divot. Take the drill, line it up on the divot, which is quite hard at a funny angle so that you can video it, and drill it through. First one that I couldn't find. Okay, so that's all the holes done. We just get the loose metal bits off. And when we place our hinges again, the holes will all line up. Just take some rivets and put them in place. Okay, now importantly when you're riveting, because there's always some slack in the rivet to begin with, we just want to make sure that the hinge is still lined up again before we start driving in these rivets. And double check, because the last thing I want to do is have to drill out stainless steel rivets. Double check again. This one needs to shift slightly. Not that far. That looks good. Okay, so now that the hinges are attached to the body, we just need to attach them to the lid. There is another piece of protective material on the lid of the kiln, which we just need to remove, which I should have done before popping it on the kiln, but it will still come off. Now when we put our hinges up, this gives you the chance just to push the lid back slightly. Again, we lift it a little bit just to not drag the fibre on it. Double check they both look pretty even. And then double check the sides again are even, which mine are not. Now they are. And then we'll double push that back, so that's all good. Okay, we've shifted again just so you can see how messy the studio is while I'm building a kiln inside. Beck is not going to be happy. And again, we're just going to take a punch the holes. This is a particularly good time to have an assistant. For the drilling of the holes into the lid. Because to drill stainless steel you need pressure, and with pressure on the lid it's going to want to move to the side. But I don't have an assistant, so we're just going to live with it. Okay, so that's 6 more holes drilled. And again, we'll get all the crud out of the way. We are obviously going to vacuum the kiln again, because there's some getting down in the gap here, but I haven't found a way to avoid that yet. Flip those back up, find the holes, have one last double check of all of your dimensions, make sure everything's lined up nicely after a drilling operation, which mine still is. Back to the riveter because I have one. And give the hinges a brush down. Okay, now we need to attach a handle to the lid. Okay, I've turned the kiln again, so the back is now here, which is why we've got the hinges. The front's facing me. That's fairly self-explanatory, I guess. And now we have a handle to put on the lid. Now you've got 2 choices, or 3 choices really, for where to put your handle. I like to put them on top, just because I'm relatively tall and grabbing the kiln and opening it is pretty easy for me. Some people like to put them on the front because they're, well, not quite as tall, or they might have it up slightly higher and they can grab the handle on the front and lift up. I don't like that particularly because it puts your hand right near a hot part, whereas here it at least keeps it away from the really hot front entrance. Or you can do both. So depending on the mood you're in, you can either grab it from the front or the top. Now to do these, it's relatively easy, just like, well, everything we've done. It's all relatively easy, but you're going to hurt the next day, and probably that night as well. I hurt, there's no doubt about it. And especially after a day of kiln course, there is nothing I want to do more than nap forever. So we just peel off a little bit of the protective stuff. We don't have to peel off the whole thing just yet. Although, to be fair, we are pretty close to the end of machining anywhere near the top of the kiln. Okay, so we just peeled it back a bit, just to get it out of the way. I like to leave this strip just along the front. It just gives me something to help line up the handle with. So we place our ruler on top. And it's 500 across, so the center is 250. These things are 150-ish long, so we just place one end at 175, the other end should be up at about 325, and we're in the ballpark for both of those. So now we line it up square, and I like to again just drag it towards the front until it's even with this little remaining grey strip. You can have it further back, you can have it further forward. This part is most definitely a suit yourself part of the day. Once we've center punched those holes, drill one hole, drill the next. Clean it up a little bit because we do have our shiny face showing already. Pop a rivet into each hole. Grab our riveter. Just double check the line up. Rivet it in. And that is now a handle done, which allows us for the first time to grab the handle and open the kiln. Now the lid will sit up there like that all by itself, just like magic. It can tip forward quite a bit before it starts to fall. So you'll get a feel for it. You never want to let it slam down though, so don't play balance. Just know though, if you do have it set up on a level surface, you open the lid fully, it's not going to just magically fall back down into the kiln. You do have to pull it forward a bit before the center of gravity tips. Now all we have left is the safety switch and kiln controller. So those are up next. Okay, so now we're ready to fit the safety switch arm, which is what this weird looking piece was, and the controller and the thermocouple to the kiln. Now we don't actually like to mount the thermocouple to the kiln, but I'll show you that in just a moment. I guess the main thing to get going here is, so this arm sits along this side of the kiln lid and just hangs over, and it just leaves this little nub sticking out, which goes into this hole, that hole, and activates the safety switch, so that when you open the lid of your kiln, it cuts all the power to the elements. The only thing I'm not going to show you how to do is hook up the control box to the elements. That's for, well, your Sparky to do. We do leave, effectively you'll get the kit just looking exactly like this. Power's already coming in. It's just the element connections to go, and that should be done by a licensed electrician, just so that they can be sure. We get the kiln controller kits built by a licensed electrician, and we get them tested and tagged before they go out. But because you're going to be having someone mounted into the kiln itself, it's a requirement that an electrician is the one who does it. Okay, so you are now going to work over my shoulder. I'll try to keep out of your way as much as possible. And with any luck, this will go nice and smoothly. So again, we have our control box, which goes on the front of the kiln. The thermocouple we can just let dangle, or we can stow it in the thermocouple hole. We then take our safety switch, place it on the edge of the lid, and drop it down till it fits into place. Now that we know where that is, we can drill a pilot hole. And I left a drill over where I was working before. So much like most things in life, it's not easy. We just want to get a mark, and we can take that off, slide that out, and now we can lift up the kiln lid, find our mark, and drill it. So that's one hole. We'll place the lid back down again, move you again, and again we take this, we can line that up with that hole, take one of the self-tapping screws which was in your kit, just going to lift this up slightly. Put this in forward, get that in a little bit, but not all the way. Just want to double check that we're right. And we are. We can take our center punch, mark the second hole, lift this up again, and move our controller back down. Okay, now we can drill the second hole, and then we'll drive both screws home. just screw anything in, but might as well show you. And that's now the safety switch arm fitted to the kiln. You can do those up just by hand. We can do one last check. Just to make sure that that activates the safety switch still, which it does. Okay, now I'm going to connect the wires and mount the control box. The control box is quite easy to mount. All we do is we get it into place so that that screw is directly above the holes. We can mark these. Take a drill, sorry, I'm trying to work around the camera, and then same again, we would just take our self-tapping screws and drive those into. We drive them in all the way obviously, but I'm about to take this apart. Okay, I'm going to make the connections and I'll come back to you.